Delighted to be back on Radio Row. Super Bowl 59 on the horizon, live and exclusive in stadium coverage for UK radio here on talkSPORT. Play-by-play. It's going to be me. It's going to be UK broadcasting legend Jeff Reinbold. It's going to be Greg Rosenthal, who I assume our friend Judy Battista here knows well, will be the third man in the booth for us. Charlie Smith's going to join us, the Saints kicker. It's going to be a wild time. Please lock in on Sunday night from 10:30. NFL Network insider Judy Battista's with us. Judy, how are you doing?
Very good, thanks. How are you doing?
You know what? We've been here since last Sunday.
I know.
It's Friday afternoon.
Do you know what day it is?
We are in New Orleans, which is a city that already has a bit of a tendency to chew you up and spit you out.
Yes.
So, yeah, I'm planning to have a day off tomorrow.
Oh, good for you. That's awesome.
Saturday is going to be very, very quiet.
Very
Everyone else
chill.
can go to parties. Everyone else can have a whale of a time. I'm going to pretend like I'm back in London, just in my
lucky
bedroom,
you.
Not doing anything, just poring over notes. That's my plan.
That sounds great.
How's your week been? How's the Insiders been?
Great. Busy, but good. Like, this is one of, I know it can chew you up and spit you out in New Orleans, but this is one of the best Super Bowl locales because everything is so compact and you can walk around and it's just great. It's always a good Super Bowl here.
Do you have the same feeling as somebody who is works at the network, does your show all the time? So for us, because we're coming from the outside, this is like a festival of friendship, just getting to see all of our friends again.
I always say it's like a high school reunion, the Super Bowl, because, like reporters are just like far flung during the season, right? You're going all over the place. But this is sort of, almost everybody is here for the Super Bowl. So yeah, you're just like, you can't walk down a hallway without running into somebody. It's kind of distracting. Like if you have to meet a deadline, it's probably not the best, but it is a great way to like just catch up with people and see everyone. It's nice.
In your columnist writer hat, what have you been working on for this week? What's the storylines you love? What's the angle that you're?
One thing I wrote was about Howie Roseman's extraordinary offseason for the Philadelphia Eagles and how he just hit it out of the park. So just that sort of deconstructing how.
I have to say, opening night. Quinion Mitchell and Cooper DeJean neither of them were on podiums, and they were stood off near each other on the side.
Yeah.
Honestly, there were as many people around there as there were around Travis Kelce's podium during the Chiefs thing. Like, they are superstars.
They're superstars. He signed Zach Bond and Saquon, and that's the first time in history 2 players were signed in free agency who became first-team All-Pros in their first year.
That's an amazing stat that I will be stealing for my broadcast on Sunday. Thank you very much.
But that just tells you, how it was an off-season for the ages. So I wrote about that and just talked to him and talked to others about that. And then just sort of talking about, I wrote a piece, which I don't even think has published yet, but sort of like these 2 teams are really consistent winners, right? Like over the last dozen years. And you get that in Kansas. You understand why in Kansas City they've had one coach. And they started with Alex Smith, who's a very good quarterback. And now, of course, they have just this like galactic quarterback in Patrick. But the Eagles have been consistent winners despite having 3 head coaches, right? Like even Chip Kelly, who you sort of think of as a flameout, had 2 seasons with 10 wins. So, how do you do that? Like, how do you explain that, like, being able to sustain a level of success when you're churning through through head coaches like that? So, just sort of wrote about like how these teams have done it.
And it's a great point because actually, if we weren't living in the Mahomes-Reed era, and if we hadn't just gone through everything that Brady did in his career, 3 Super Bowls in 8 years is an astonishing record for any team, and like we should be celebrating that.
Absolutely, and I think it gets overlooked. You know, I think that the fact that the Eagles have been sustained at this level, they move on from Andy Reid, who had won a ton when he was there, and then they've managed to keep it up again despite like going through 3 head coaches. But you're right. I think everything gets overshadowed by Mahomes, which I sort of think is why there's a little bit of the Chiefs fatigue, is that we just came off one of these dominant teams, and I think fans of other teams feeling like their team had no chance of breaking through against Brady and Belichick, and then once they finally got rid of Brady and Belichick, like, here's the next one that you're going to have for a dozen years.
Just a little break.
You just wanted a little window where other teams could, get in there. But
yeah, and he's right, because like as much as I've been doing the Super Bowl since '49, and that was the first of the second Patriots dynasty, right?
Right.
And even by the time you get to that fourth Super Bowl they were in, you're coming here to Radio Row and we love it, but you're having the same Tom Brady conversation that you've been having for 4 of the last 5 years. It does get like, you understand why people get fatigued by it on that front.
I do, because, listen, even the reporters are like, what new can you say? Like, what? I mean, they're a marvel. Like, you can marvel at how good they are and how consistent they are. But at some point, you sort of run out of storyline. So, if it's tough for us as reporters, like, for fans, like, obviously, you're like, you just want your team to have a shot here.
Just talk to us a little bit about doing the insiders. We've had both Ian and Tom on this week, and the role within that team and how much you're enjoying that show, because it's kind of really taken on a life of its own this season.
It has. I mean, this year it went to prime time and 5 days a week, and it's been great. I mean, it's like our news show. It's the daily news show. So that's been awesome. Those guys are, round the clock insiders. I am not a round the clock insider because I'm a columnist. So they are churning 24/7. And I am in the position of, I do the show, but then I also step back and write about stuff. So I've got a great balance, or I've got the balance at least that I think is great. But the show's been fantastic, and like it's just fun to do news every day. Like, it's just like that. Even in the off season, it's like remarkable. You sort of think like, man, it's June. What are we going to talk about? There's always something to talk about. We never run out of stuff.
We had this. we launched a dedicated YouTube channel this year rather than having our NFL content go on the main talkSPORT channel. And the big question from bosses was, but what are you going to do from February to September? And I'm like,
people always
say that. Know.
Right. People always say that when they find out what you do. Like, our neighbors who are, not in this business, like, will always ask, like, well, what do you do during the off season? I'm like, there's actually not an off season. Just a season without games. That's all.
I would be remiss and would get in trouble with my Jets supporting producer as well if I didn't talk to you about this situation in New York as well. What do you make of the moves this off season and where that's going?
You want to start with the Jets or the Giants? Because
the Jets.
Both teams. All right, let's start with the
Jets.
Jets. Well, I like the hire of Aaron Glenn. I covered Aaron Glenn as a player in New York, and so I think he's got the right temperament. I also think he is, people think because he's a former player, he'll be like a player's coach. I don't think so. I think he's going to be, he's a Bill Parcells disciple. I think he will crack the whip, and frankly, I think that is a little bit of what was lacking at the Jets. I think they need some accountability and some discipline, and I think he will bring that to them. And I think you could see that even in just his introductory press conference, you could just sort of see his bearing and his tone about how he's going to approach things. Obviously, they have a ton of big decisions coming up. The quarterback, obviously, is one of them. But, Devontae Adams, they've got a ton of young players that are now eligible for contract extensions. So they got their work cut out for them. But I do... I liked the hire, aside from the fact that he was obviously a fabulously successful defensive coordinator. I also think he's the right personality and temperament for that job.
I think you're absolutely right on that, and I think it's the... I don't know the man personally, but I think he'll manage up well as well, and that's a big part of the job in New York, right? Yeah,
and listen, the Jets told me, like, before they did the hire, like, they watched his press conferences, like, they watched how he dealt with the media, they watched how he dealt with players, like, it just is what it is. It's an element of the job in New York, especially with that fan base that is so desperate, like, and has not won in so long and just wants to get back to relevance. That you do have to manage that. It's a big part of the job. I'm not sure we're going to have time to get to the Giants because you've got to get on and do another, I'm sure, round of interviews. You're having fun with it at least. Yes. Oh, the Super Bowl is awesome. Like, great. I still get very excited to be at the Super Bowl. Good. Love it. Thank you so much, Judy. Really appreciate your time. Thanks for having me.